our job here today is to uncover the traumas, not the traumatic experience, right? So most people connect trauma to the experience that caused it. And this is not a show where you're going to get to listen to these horrible things that happened to Justin as a tourist, right? What we're doing is coming and exploring the strategies that he carried forth from these experiences. And it is in those strategies that we create untruths in our world that bring trauma, suffering, and disconnection. And another way to say that ties to our title is that at some point in our life, these things were true. And these truths that we developed through these times in our life where we had a perceived loss of control, we unfortunately will hold on to them when they're no longer true. And whenever you live in untruth, you create stress in your life, and that's post-traumatic stress. Because we as a human being can, on that subconscious level, we can learn any lesson. Her lessons, my lessons, similar, but critical difference. And then, is the world going to reward me for your lesson, or is it going to punish you for it? It rewards me, right? That's how I got to be a Navy SEAL. But was being a Navy SEAL a reward or just the ultimate punishment? Right? Is being in the car business the reward, and having what has become successful businesses the reward, or the ultimate punishment? And so that's where we see that same tenet of our traumas are our superpower and our kryptonite.
Hi, it's Vicky Giangagorio. Welcome back to Capital T Truth. Today's episode is an uncut, deep dive that hits home for anyone who's ever felt driven to prove they're enough. Larry Atch sits down with Justin Cole, a high performer, discipline builder, and fellow podcaster. And what makes this conversation different is the rawness. They don't tour the details of trauma, they expose the strategy trauma installs. The subconscious loop that turns pain into performance and success into suffering. You'll hear how something as common as dyslexia can quietly create a lifelong identity of I'm broken, and how that belief can shape everything: relationships, ambition, business, even the way you push your body. And then the shift. 2 questions that can change the trajectory of your life. What if you had nothing to prove? And what if it could be easy? If you've been winning but not feeling free, then this episode, it's for you.
Welcome back for all you listeners, as well as to any of the new time listeners, to Capital T Truth. And in this episode, we have Justin Cole. So Justin is a connection, and we've actually, I think we have a deeper relationship now than we did a day and a half ago, because we've gotten to spend time together yesterday, kind of preparing for this and his podcast, and we just got off of his. So normally I wouldn't have this much background, but like, we are both raring to go on this. So Justin, thank you for coming.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. I'm excited also.
Yep. And a little nervous, because this is a little different format for podcasts than normal. Justin and I got connected through a mutual friend, Mark Devine. So Mark Devine's a SEAL, was a very successful SEAL, and I'd say has had even more success post his SEAL career, being able to bring the unique, and I would say his unique take on what it meant to be a SEAL, what it took to be a SEAL. And what I love about Mark is that in order to be a SEAL, there has to be something wrong with you. He has taken all the best things for what it takes to perform as a SEAL, but been able to bring it to the world through light-centered, being aligned. Like, that's how I define Mark. Do you agree, disagree?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, he's literally changed my life. I started out by reading one of his early books, and then I read another book, and I've read all of his books, and then I hired him to coach me. And yeah, definitely has changed my life, and as a result, changed the lives of a lot of people who are close to me.
Yeah, it's amazing. And now I get the benefit of being able to work with you through Mark. So, it just keeps on going. With that, as you guys may or may not know, there's three formats that we do in this Capital T Truth podcast. So one format is where Vicky, my co-host, and I go through a deep dive on a content, piece of content or a concept. Generally, those pieces of content and concepts come from these type of calls. So the second format is where I bring people onto the show, oftentimes listeners, in this case, a fellow podcaster, to be able to dive into the limitations that they are subconsciously putting into their way. And from listeners from the past will know that those those come from our traumas, our strategies of survival. So our job here today is to uncover the traumas, not the traumatic experience, right? So most people connect trauma to the experience that caused it. And this is not a show where you're going to get to listen to these horrible things that happened to Justin as a tourist, right? What we're doing is coming and exploring the strategies that he carried forth from these experiences. And it is in those strategies that we create untruths in our world that bring trauma, suffering, and disconnection. And so we're here to really dive into those strategies of survival. The the general concept that we always like to go through is what are we trying to do? How do we do it in this? And it all starts from that fundamental understanding that trauma is merely a strategy of survival that is being used on a subconscious level in a different environment from the one in which you learned it. And another way to say that, that ties to our title, is that at some point in our life, these things were true. And these truths that we developed through these times in our life where we had a perceived loss of control, we unfortunately will hold on to them when they're no longer true. And whenever you live in untruth, you create stress in your life, and that's post-traumatic stress. And so our job today is to unearth some of Justin's untruths, some of his strategies of survival. And in that, we'll get to see how that has both given him the gift in the past, right? We call them trauma treats, these treats of performance, as well as how they may limit him from the future. And ultimately, we want to come up with some counter strategies, some counter truths that will bring more alignment into his life as well as into all of ours. And so, with that, Justin, we've talked enough that isn't the first time you've heard that, but I'd love to hear, now that you've got it three times, like, what are the things that stick out for you?
Well, it's difficult, even with all the coaching I've had from Mark Divine over the years and the 400 plus books I've read at this point. It's still difficult. And more specifically, those books focus almost exclusively on becoming a better person, or they're about successful people or people who have done incredible things, So even when considering the work I've done, it's hard, still a little bit hard to to I guess you could say accept that definition, which is true, of trauma, right?
Yes,
So,
say more. Where does it become difficult?
well, so everyone in their conscious mind likes to believe, and to most people, they don't even think about the separation between
Yep.
conscious mind and subconscious, right? So most people like to believe that they're in control of,
Complete control. Yep.
yeah, of everything in their life. They're in control, because that's just natural. That's what we want as humans. But uh,
Why do we want it? That's an important question.
well, it's, as a species, we're genetically, like, we're programmed to, like, naturally cry as a baby to get the help we need from people who can take care of us until we can eventually, hopefully, fend for ourselves. So we're literally programmed to believe that we're in control, on a conscious level.
Well, yeah, I'd say a clear word is we're conditioned, right? Right? We're conditioned, like, and I always say that, the other half of my world is leadership development in big and or medium-sized companies. And one of the things, a big thing around leadership is that I'll ask in any audience, how many of you are born a leader? And you'll get like some of the people, and maybe 20% will raise their hand, like, yeah, I was born a leader. And I'll say, well, how many of you are leaders? And maybe get half the room. And then I bring up just what you brought up. We are literally born leaders. If leadership is influencing the behaviors of those around us, right, as a fundamental definition, that's what leadership is. Who are the best leaders in the world? Babies. Like, they get every adult around them to behave exactly as they want, right? Exactly as they need. And so I think you're completely correct. We are born into leadership, and then we forget that. We forget that we are leaders, like, by the very nature of being a human that requires a coordination of action with others.
And ironically, there is like this programming that occurs in most schools where, and they've done a bunch of research on this, and they've found that when kids are really young, like kindergarten, first grade, there's often very little separation between the kids who seem to be the smartest and the kids who maybe are on the opposite end of the spectrum. And over time, through years of education, through our traditional educational systems, you see this separation because between the high performers and the ones that aren't so high on the performance side of things, because of their beliefs that are being programmed as they gain the ability to think more. So there's, coming full circle to trauma, there's a lot of
You
there's
got it.
there's a lot of stuff that happens. The nature versus nurture stuff kicks in, and you in many cases end up with people who become someone that they weren't when they were born.
Yep. Okay, so you just tossed a softball to me, and we're jumping into this right away. Yeah, we're gonna, I don't know, we have a little more small talk, but no, they just made this too easy for me. So we're going to jump right into this one. Something that you said that I very much agree with you in, right? In that, through the educational system, there are narratives, right? There are stories that are told to students that then they often take on, right? Both on a conscious and a subconscious level. And as soon as they take on those stories and make them true, right, we now are stuck to certain behaviors. For example, I'm not good at Spanish. I'm not good at languages. I'm good at math, but I'm not good at Spanish. Now, as soon as I put those narratives in place and it becomes true that I'm not good at languages, I am good at math, what am I going to pick in high school as a option? Or what am I going to pick in college? Am I picking languages or am I picking math? Oh, I'm going into engineering, right? Why? Because I know I am good at math, right? I am not good at languages. Now, if you look, how much time did I put into languages versus how much time did I put into math? And you would see that I put in a lot more time with math and very little time in languages. So it's no surprise that I have skill in math and no skill in languages. But with that identity of I am, right, I'm now screwed. So what I know from something that you've said, you've shared in the last couple conversations we had is you have dyslexia, right? And
Right.
so dyslexia creates this, because of the way your brain's, it's not because you're stupid, right? It's because of the way your brain's wired. You have difficulty from a wiring perspective of reversing words, right? Having difficulty to consume content, especially in a written format, right?
Right.
How long did it take before that was diagnosed, that was recognized in your educational career?
First grade.
First grade is when they figured it out. So, do you see that as a fortunate thing or a bad thing?
Well, it's cool that you brought that up, especially when considering the nature of your podcast, because like just throwing it right out there, it was traumatic
Uh,
because like, it was.
Especially then, because I mean, I don't know how old you are, but we're not that far off of each other, right? And I would imagine back then that would have been the energy in which that would have been told to you is that you are broken. There's something wrong with you, correct? Not like, it's a bit different now.
Oh yeah.
Yes or no?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I was, as we also touched on in prior conversations, adding mixed fractions in my head before I even got into kindergarten. So it went from this like potential hero type scenario to I didn't literally ride the short bus, but I had to leave class. And like when it came to reading and writing time, I had to leave class and go to special ed and sit with
Yeah.
this wonderful lady, Miss Stetson. If you're still out there and you're watching this by chance, thank you. You're so awesome and sweet to me. On the one hand, on the other hand, I hated it.
Yeah.
I hated it so much that I would literally like hide when it was time to go to school in the morning. I would, I mean,
So
it,
this is where I do my work. All right. So, okay, we're going to slow down a little bit. You hated it. That's true, right? Why?
well, and I'm not gonna lie. There were other things going on at home with the family that were more stressful than any.
Adding to the stress. But the what I want to focus on is that being separate, being identified as different, and I would say more identified as broken. Like all these kids, they're not broken. You're broken. And then being taken out of class in front of the class and then put with wonderful Mrs. Stetson. Why for you, what's the story, the mean voice in the back of your second grade head, the third grade head? What's that mean voice saying to you when it's like, oh, it's time to go to special ed?
Well, so I should probably back up a couple steps because before that, like before that diagnosis was made, there was this extreme confusion because I had gained a decent amount of confidence with the math skills and
Yep.
the adults saying all these wonderful things about me and my ability to have conversations, pretty complicated conversations. Apparently, like I would just follow my dad around and ask him questions about like why is the sky blue? So he's having to get into physics and
Physics.
in geometry and like all this
And
stuff.
you're following it.
Yeah, yeah, and so it was like there were kids in my classes that I never perceived as being brilliant who were easily writing words and even reading when I couldn't even and of course back then I don't know if they still do it now because this is a good way to make kids feel this broken feeling is they would go around the room and you'd have to take turns reading out loud from the same
Oh
song.
yeah, I remember that. I had such because as I shared on your podcast, undiagnosed autism, right? And the inability to work or um, relate to kids or any humans my age or older in a normal way, which created a lot of that feeling of isolation. And so that to me, because I never knew what someone was thinking or feeling, they were always scary, right? I didn't know what was gonna happen. And so I was terrified to speak in front of the audience because I didn't know if they were going to yell at me or laugh at me or celebrate me. And so I know exactly what you mean about that fear of like they'd also do you'd have to stand in line and it would be like you get to the front of the line and they would ask you to spell a word and then you either had to get back in the line or you got to sit down. And I was
Yeah.
like, I would be terrified. So I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, it was it was really bad before the diagnosis. So then once that, extra testing was done, they didn't tell me this, but they told my parents that I was twice exceptional. And I think if they could have told me that and explained what it was, and for the, listeners or viewers who don't know what that is, it's when there is a learning disability present along with relatively high IQ.
Yeah.
Um, so like again, I like if if they would have explained it to me, then everything would have made more sense. But without the explanation, I was just confused. So to
And what was that confusion? If you had to put words to it, what words would you put to that second grade, third grade confusion?
so luckily I was only in for first grade and like half of second grade. But to answer your question, uh, The words that come to mind are, um, well, yeah, confusion, frustration. Um, I guess I would say that anxiety would.
Confusion about what?
So, well, I just didn't understand until like I was eventually on the math team in elementary school. Like I didn't understand, and even then, I didn't like really like. Eventually, my parents did tell me like you have a high IQ, a relatively high IQ. I'm not like a genius or anything, but um, I I'm up there in the top couple percentile. It, they eventually.
That's genius. Just to be clear.
Well, yeah, I mean, I ended up researching it, and um, I do a full breakdown on it in episode 0 of my podcast where my
Yeah.
wife interviewed me. It turns out like 139 or higher is
Yeah.
is uh, is the top one. That's the kind of the
Yep.
minimum to be in the top 1%. Yeah, and I am. Um, I had to take a special IQ test in college because they couldn't figure out. Like I told them I'm dyslexic, but they were like, uh, "Yeah, if you want to," and it's like ironic is the word of the day for me. I mentioned it a lot in the podcast where Larry was on my show. But anyways, it was ironic because languages were terrible for me because of the
Yep.
dyslexia, and they told me that if I wanted to avoid taking a foreign language in college, where it was a very competitive school, I had to make sure I got all A's. Like to get into the business school that I wanted to get into, I couldn't risk taking a foreign language, like and fail to get into the school, like the business school within that school.
Right.
So anyway, yeah, this IQ test was like 3 days long, and yeah, the director of the disability research center there at the university, they shared the results without the dyslexia, and I scored like high average, and
Yep.
then he's like, "What do you think about that?" And I was like, "Well, I'm pretty disappointed." And he was like, "Why?" I was like, "Because apparently my IQ has gone down over the years." And he was like, "Well, so that's with dyslexia, but that's an unfair disadvantage.
Right.
And here's your IQ when considering your disability." And he said 139 plus. So with all that being said, I still don't believe that like I've met people who are so smart that they can do extreme calculations in their head, like, 6 and 7 figure calculations with no calculator. So I'm just not one to say that I'm a genius or anything like that. So
We're gonna get to that. We'll see. By the end of the episode, we might change your mind. I'm
okay.
starting to see the patterns, but we're going to keep going on this. So, going back to the confusion, right? What did you have to say to yourself, right, as a little kid, to make sense of what you were experiencing?
Well,
And these may not be true, right? These are most likely not true statements, but those statements of something's wrong with me, or what words did that little kid use to try and make sense of this confusing environment? This I'm exceptional, but I'm not. I'm broken. Like that's what I'm hearing. Is like I'm exceptional on one hand, I'm broken on the other.
right. Yeah. Well, so I did not want to be there, as we already touched on. I would
Yep.
literally like they would have to my poor mom would have to like in some cases like call my grandfather to drive over because my dad was at work, and already he worked a lot, so he was at work and my grandfather had to drive over and physically make me go to school. So
And
yeah,
so think about why doesn't that little kid want to go to school?
I just didn't feel like I belonged there. Like,
Okay, so I'm separate.
yeah, well, I get there, and not only are they separating me, they are doing it in front of other people, and it's clear that they're separating me pretty.
Something's wrong. They're not sending you to the ice cream parlor.
Right. Yeah, exactly. I'm not getting to go on a school trip without anyone else,
Yeah.
or um
And
so
so within that being separate, so what I'm hearing first is broken, like something's wrong with me. And then there's the second part of that something being wrong with me is leads to this, well, now I'm separate. And what did that mean? Like, 'cause that little kid would have to say, like, oh, okay, now I'm separate. They all see me as separate and broken. Where did that lead?
Well, it led to me making it my mission to eliminate that
And prove them wrong.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I sat there, and it was like at the beginning of The Simpsons when Bart is like up there at the chalkboard just writing the same things. I will not, I will not, I will not. Like that's what you do when you're dyslexic in 1986 and
Yep.
you are being taught how to write properly. You sit there and write not just like sentences, but you're writing like a lowercase a thousand
Yep.
times, then a
Yep.
lowercase b, like pages and pages and pages. So I mean, ironically, it quickly created discipline that
Mm-hmm.
most kids probably didn't have at that age. So yeah, I made it my mission to get out of there as quickly as possible. And luckily, like I said, halfway through the second grade, I got my freedom back.
So, so what I'm hearing, like, if I'm starting to piece together this loop, right? So this loop is, they're telling me I'm broken, right? They're telling me something's wrong with me.
Well,
Within that play, go ahead.
or their actions are leading me to believe that.
That same thing. Yep, I'm
Hmm.
with you, right? Then that leads to they're going to separate me from, I'm going to be separate from the group, and that separation is going to be interpreted by the group as a bad, because of a flaw,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
And then from there, what does that mean? Well, I have to work hard, because if I work hard enough, if I suffer enough, if I persevere enough, I can be back to I can be back to the group. They'll accept me.
Right. Yep.
And so then within that same thing, how does that become a loose? They're telling me I'm broken. That's going to create a negative perception of separation, right? Other people's looking at me as I'm separate, and that's bad. I have to work hard to do it. That would also feed to, well, I have to work hard because something's wrong with me. Not everyone has to work hard. Like, it reinforces.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I didn't know. I didn't ask the other kids what they did when I was gone, but I had a feeling that they weren't sitting there writing the same letter over and over again 1,000 times. So
No,
not
definitely.
only, yeah, so not only was I separated, I was being forced to do things that felt discriminatory, even though I didn't even know what that word meant at the time. I knew it didn't feel
You're
fair.
being punished. Like, it would feel like you're being punished.
Right,
And you're being punished for something that you didn't even, it's not your fault,
right, right.
right? And it's that also leads to, right? So if we just look at this from a structural standpoint, another's assessment of me says that I'm broken, something's wrong, which then leads to my punishment through separation and negative external assessment, more negative assessment.
Hmm.
And then now they're going to punish me by making me do stuff that no one else has to do. I can see how the strategy of I'll prove them wrong comes out of that. Let me show them. You're not going to break me. Yes?
Yeah, yeah, and I guess fortunately for me, uh, that I got out of there faster. There were only a couple other kids that had to go, and I was out of there a lot faster. So I don't know what that experience did to the other kids, and what it does. Or, like I honestly I don't
We
know. I
have
don't
no
have
idea. Like,
kids
we
yet.
have no idea. We'll have to find one of those kids, have them on the show. We'll figure it out, because it'd be surprising. But like Bobby, that was with you, and when Justin got out in a year and he had to spend 4 years in there, that's the biggest issue of his life. Like, that's the craziest part about humans and traumas. You don't know what it is that triggers it. We don't know what little experience is what creates the seed for our strategies. And now we can see your strategy starting to develop here. I can see how, uh, there would be a requirement for you to uh, suffer, to work hard, to persevere, to prove. Does that exist in your life anywhere else, or just in first, second grade?
Oh yeah, I mean it's it's come in waves, you know. I mean, I went to I just made an incorrect negative assumption based on that experience that I would never be able to hang in the classroom with the kids that didn't. Like I knew that I was out of special ed, but I still knew like exactly
I'm
what.
still different. I'm still broken. I have to work harder, all of which is being reinforced. And some people still look at me different, right? So that strategy, that loop, right? That loop of someone else is assessing I'm broken. When they assess that I'm broken, it's going to create this negative experience, negative assessment. Now I'm going to go get punished, and I have to work hard to get my way out of punishment. That loop is just reinforced because you can see that you have to work harder than others.
Yeah, absolutely. And so again, I made an incorrect negative assumption that I would never, probably never be able to hang with the kids that didn't have to go to special ed because it continued to manifest. The, the dyslexia never goes away.
No.
I mean, I even with like all that testing they did when I was in college to the I guess the ending to that story is that after that test, the director of the Disability Research Center was like, yeah, he can take cultural studies classes instead of foreign language because I scored in the
It's just
second.
not fair.
Yeah, I mean, they made me take this test on it was an old school cassette tape that they hand you a little test booklet. You go sit in a room by yourself, and you push play on the cassette player, and sure enough, this guy in Africa comes on and tells me that I'm going to learn how to, or try to learn how to learn a little bit of Swahili. And and for anyone that has that speaks Swahili or that like knows how it actually like works, I mean, it's what you see in like movies and TV shows is pretty accurate. I mean, it's like a foreign. It's to me like Spanish and French.
You can at least see the structure of the words. This is just a bunch of noises.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So I literally scored in the second percentile. So, um, which couldn't be more polar opposite than the IQ.
All your performance everywhere else. Yeah.
Yeah, like it was just like the best example of proving that I'm twice exceptional. I don't think there could have been a better example of that. So anyway, yeah, I continue to struggle with the dyslexia because I killed it in math until like the third grade. I could do everything in my head easily, and then long division popped up. And when you say to divide,
Now there's letters. Now numbers are being reversed.
yeah, well that and like they say divide 7,557,327 by 1,777. Well, you're not doing that in your head unless you're in that like top 1/10 of
Yeah.
1% of people, and so you have to learn, or we had to learn steps. I don't even know if they teach long division anymore. And then, as you said, the spelling contests, right? Like, I would like almost always be the first person to sit back down. Like,
Oh, me too. I'm right there with you.
so yeah, I switched that drive to compete to athletics. So
Okay.
I just let the other kids have the classroom, and I started lifting weights in elementary school. Being here in Texas, high school football is the best. So yeah, I just wandered away from academics and competing in academics to my goal. Ironically, I saw there was a movie. You're a Navy SEAL. There was a movie called Navy SEALs that came out in like 1989 or something like that. So it was either Navy SEAL or it was the next Troy Aikman. Wanted to
Yeah.
be a Dallas Cowboys quarterback. So
Now let's just pause there, right? Because I one of the important pieces here is to always tie it back to our loop to be able to show how this subconscious loop makes all our choices for us. So what the process of your loop led to what behavior? I have to work harder than everyone else to prove that I'm not broken so they'll accept me. Correct?
That is the outcome, yes. Hmm.
That's the outcome. So then the two things that you just said, what are you consciously choosing this because it's good for your life, or is your subconscious loop saying this is what Justin needs? Navy SEAL and NFL quarterback,
So,
right? How does that fit to the loop? Does it
so
fit to it?
it definitely does. I mean, yeah,
Yeah,
because that,
dead on.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, and the quarterback came from watching the Cowboys with my dad, the games, and became a fan and learned more and more about the game. And as you know, and most people know, even if they don't know anything about football, you have to be very good to get to the NFL. And as you know better than anyone, other than maybe other Navy SEALs, I mean, you all know that you're not going to become a Navy SEAL if you don't work hard.
Yeah, and it's not only work hard, but suffer and excel, right? So what formula did your subconscious latch onto other than that? Oh, the more I suffer, the more I excel. See, I got out quick,
Hmm.
right? And so what this shows is that our purpose in life is picked by our unresolved traumas, right? I chose to be a Navy SEAL not because it was consciously the best thing for me. I chose it because my subconscious patterns, my subconscious strategies of survival required me to prove that I wasn't flawed and that I was tough enough to keep myself safe against all the dangerous people in the world, which was everyone, right? Because of, you know, you have dyslexia, I have the autism, and the autism made everyone dangerous. So best thing to do if everyone's dangerous is to get really, really, really tough, right? If I'm the toughest person around, if I'm the hardest motherfucker around, well, then no one can hurt me. But where do Navy SEALs work? Only in places where people try to kill them. So this model shows a very important piece, right? That your traumas and my traumas pick our purpose, right? They picked our purpose of saying, oh, we're going to be the next Troy Aikman or we're going to be a Navy SEAL. But in both of those environments, all it would have done is reinforce that something's wrong with you. You're not going to be accepted. Let me work hard. Let me show you. Let me prove you wrong. And if this is the biggest thing that we get out for the audience, it is in understanding that when you have unrecognized, unresolved traumas, which are just these strategies of survival that live in our subconscious, they will pick our purpose and our person in our life. They have to, right? And in doing that, we falsely believe that this purpose that was selected by our subconscious is our true purpose in life, but it's actually the opposite. It's brought forth from the lowest frequency that I have, right? So being a Navy SEAL was not a pure expression of me. It was a pure expression or a requirement of my traumas. How about now I move on, like, because I know the end of the story here. How about business? Like you go to one of the hardest business schools in the country. Oh, what? Maybe to prove that you're good and they're wrong, that you're not broken, that maybe I'll be accepted. And then what have you done for the last 10, 20 years?
I have, yeah, I mean, the pattern continued. I got into business and I kicked ass, took names, and then the Great Recession
And
hit.
suffered, right? How did you work hard or did it come easy for you?
Oh no, I, I mean, it was crazy. I landed a multi-million dollar loan while I was still in business school to open up my first company, and we suffered. Like, well, first of all, I suffered. So, as we already touched on, very difficult business school. I was a triple major, and because
Of course you were,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
No surprise now. We now know why.
yeah, I was a triple major because I couldn't find, like, it was weird because the football, it was injuries. Like, I don't like.
Well, and this is another piece. What do we both share?
Injuries.
You didn't get to the Super Bowl because of injuries. I didn't get to stay as a SEAL because of injuries. And that's based on our fundamental loops. Like, as much as we want to say no, that getting hit that one time's what did it, no, I think it would have been inevitable, but both of us would have had to do that because of the trauma, because of the loops. We had to be broken, right? Both of us were broken, identified. Everyone said you're broken as a little kid. Surprise, surprise that we get broken in our jobs.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And it's like, I don't know. I recently took a test from Life DNA, and they, tell you all sorts of things. But for the purpose of this show, I'll mention that one of the things that came back in my results is that I don't naturally have a lot of muscle mass. And so, like, I work out, I still work out 7 days a week. Um,
I bet you don't do easy workouts either.
oh no, no,
No, I bet you punish the hell out of yourself in your workouts.
yeah, I mean, yeah, they're not
Surprise,
easy.
surprise, you got connected to Mark,
Yeah,
who was professional at punishing people and
yeah, yeah,
getting them to the truth.
yeah. So I couldn't find anything I was as passionate about as football or cars. So I come up with this idea to, um, along with some partners, to open up a classic and exotic car dealership, because that market was white hot right before the Great Recession. And yeah, so here I am.
Yeah, everyone's got free money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so here I am, triple major, because I can't figure out what to do with my life. I write this business plan, I start presenting it, and sure enough, the third banker we took the plan to for practice gives us a multi-million dollar loan. So then I drop down from three majors to one, to just graduate as quickly as possible, because I'm trying to open and run a business while graduating from one of the toughest. It was actually at the time the number one commercial real estate development program in the country. So, which ironically, the Great Recession was caused by the collapse of the mortgage-backed securities market.
Yep.
So here I am getting a degree in a field that no one's going to be hiring in anytime soon. So yeah,
And
I
then starting a business at the perfect time to not have clients.
unknowingly, right? Yeah. So
Yeah.
I opened the,
Or subconsciously.
yeah, yeah.
You're
I
too
mean,
you're too smart. Like, where I would say is you're too smart in too good of a school to not have seen this coming. But your subconscious, oh, this is going to be perfect for us. We get to suffer. We get to have negative judgment of our bankers, of the people in our lives. Like, we'll want to say that no, there was no possible way for me to see this coming, but I could see how this lines up completely with what your subconscious needs.
well, yes, in some way. Well, they say mothers are always right, and my mother was like, hell no, this is a terrible idea. You should not. You worked your ass off to get into that university. You worked your ass off to get into that program. You're graduating from one of the best program in the country, and you're going to go flip cars? Like, that's like crazy, So, with all that being said, it's hindsight's 2020. And yeah,
If
so
hindsight's 2020, if you understand your subconscious loops. Like, I'll add that second half. Like, and that's where, think of, if you and I were having this conversation and we knew we had to look out for you to make choices to prove to others, and to make choices that are going to constantly be a hard uphill battle. Like, if you knew that those two things were tendencies of yours, right? To have to prove and to pick paths that were very, very hard, right? Could we have made different choices over the last 15, 20 years?
absolutely. Yeah. 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 So I mean, the injuries prevented the football. That led to business, and then business led to the car business, which for anyone who's watching this,
It's a grind. It is a
yeah,
grind. Every part of the car business is a grind.
yeah. I mean, it's the analogy I give is that we are dolphins at my company. If you work here now, and we touched on this and the episode we just recorded for my podcast, uh, I'm down to one person on my team right now who doesn't belong on my team, not because they don't have the skill set and can't perform, but because they don't have the right mindset, and they
Right.
don't they I guess to kind of, I don't want to go in too many different directions here, but to kind of loop back to what you touched on earlier, like the I don't belong here type stuff in elementary
Yeah.
school, just like you, it led to bullying. So
Yep.
not only did I have to go to special ed, I I then would at recess would have this one kid chasing me around, because I was different. And
Yep.
eventually, as I'm sure you learned too, you have to stand up. And well, you either take it and you just keep taking it, or eventually you stand up, at least try to stand up for yourself. And in that case, I did stand up for myself, and it was over pretty quickly because I just kicked him in the stomach and knocked the breath out of him. But yeah, that pattern has kind of followed me through my life, which again, you're I'm sure you're like, based on everything I've learned from you already, on a subconscious level, I must have been sending signals to people that led them to believe that despite I was being nice to them, the fact that I was being nice to them, that they should not like me.
But that is absolutely true, right? Now, if we go back to our fundamental loop, right? Our fundamental loop of someone is assessing me as broken. From that, there will be negative assessments of others about me, right? That's your second step. Of course, you're going to need people that when you're nice, show up mean. You need it because it keeps that a true. It keeps that around. It keeps it, and because for you, that that second piece of that negative assessment drives to the behavior of persevering, working hard, and becoming exceptional, right? So your subconscious connected those two together. And so I'm not surprised that you have built businesses over the last 10, 15 years. I'd be willing to bet that your businesses have done above average in the domain. Yes or no?
Overall, yes, they have.
Overall, yes, right? So, and I'll be willing to bet you had a whole bunch of people involved in those businesses causing you trouble.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So there's our loop. That's how we get it. Like, oh, and who had to work the hardest to make sure it was successful? Who had to persevere? You,
Me. Yep.
right? Who had to prove, like, against all odds that are self created, all challenges self created on a subconscious level, you persevered. And so it's just a manifestation of the same loop.
Right. Yeah. And so to, like, I guess, loop back around, I'm down to one person. I went from a group of people. We couldn't even be considered a team. Like, and I consumed a number of podcasts that you were on before I asked you to join me on my podcast, or before we met
Yep.
earlier for the recording of you being on my podcast. And one of the things I noticed that goes hand in hand with what we're discussing now is that when you got out of the SEALs, you built teams and and expected that civilians would operate like SEALs. And
Oh, yeah. It was the most painful experience of my life to realize that not everyone is high functioning, will keep their word, and will never give up. Because
and
that's
that
all I knew.
right. And that type of, like, that combination of characteristics put you in the top 1/10 of 1%. Like, if you consider your series of Naval Academy,
Yep.
officer, SEAL, SEAL leader, like all that,
Yep.
you go from that to the civilian world. And in my case, I that first dealership that I created did phenomenal. We had like a few months of burning through cash to get our
Yep.
marketing flowing, and then when we hit our like rhythm before the recession hit, all of a sudden in my mid 20s, it's looking like I'm, a self-made multi-millionaire and my life's going to be fantastic. And
But
fast,
this is the key. This is the key. Say that became true. What could not be true?
well, if
You
that,
couldn't be broken. You couldn't be someone broken. You couldn't have people have negative assessments of you. You wouldn't have to work hard. So there is no way that that could have turned into that success, because you would have had to let go of what everything that got you to there. And that's where our traumas limit us. They're your superpower, right? All the successes that you had in your life came from your perseverance, your hard work, your dedication, the willing to do what no one else is willing to do, right? That gave you your gifts. That's your superpower. And it's going to make sure you never get to experience full success, because then you'd have to let go of the lies. And you don't even know the lies are there. They're held in the subconscious.
right? Yeah. Yeah. And it is weird because the car business is like a breeding ground for people who are, I mean, I hate to say it, and I'm sure colleagues, if they or when they see this, are not going to like what I have to say. But if you're successful in the car business, I would say about 90% of the people who are successful, really successful in the car business, are readily willing, able, and feel no remorse for jeopardizing their integrity to make a buck. And
Or I think another way to say that is to benefit at another's cost.
absolutely, which, as you know, like even though neither one of us are psychologists, that's a sociopathic tendency. Like to not feel remorse for taking advantage of someone in a way that leads to their monetary loss for your monetary gain and not feeling bad about it or any remorse for it, then there's a sociopathic tendency there. So
Or right? So there are traumas associated to that. There are untruths that that person is living in, right? And that's the crazy part about our traumas. They're established when we're between 4 and 8, right? When we're pre-logical, and you never know. I have a twin sister. Our core traumas, like our seed trauma, was the same one, same day, same thing. And because we as a human being can, on that subconscious level, we can learn any lesson, right? Her lessons, my lessons, similar, but critical difference. And then, is the world going to reward me for your lesson, or is it going to punish you for it? It rewards me, right? That's how I got to be a Navy SEAL. But was being a Navy SEAL a reward or just the ultimate punishment? Right? Is
yeah,
being in the car business the reward, and having what has become successful businesses the reward, or the ultimate punishment? And so that's where we see that same tenet of our traumas are our superpower and our kryptonite. And so at the end of this, we've now established, like, okay, we have a decent idea of the loop that has driven not only your success, but has then driven all this suffering and struggle that you've had in your life. What could we do different about it? Like, how, because that's why I love the fact that we're having this now, is like you are in the point in your life and business right now where you can change it. Like, it can be different tomorrow than it was for the last chunk of years. And so then I would go to looking at those things, those traumas, and what are the opposites of it? What would be the inverse of that? Um, what if you didn't have to prove anything to anyone anymore? What
yeah,
would that look like in your life?
including myself. Like,
Oh yeah.
well, yeah, I mean, it'd be interesting because I don't, like, I tell people I don't work out every day because I care about having a six pack, and I have nice cars.
It's to punish yourself for being broken. I
Well,
ultimately.
well, yeah, so there's that, and then there's the, like, they've done all this research and proven that uh at least 30 minutes of cardio every day is more effective than any antidepressant,
Yeah.
so, like, yeah, I mean, whether it's, yeah, well,
You're not doing 30 minutes of easy cardio.
No, I'm doing 6.5 minute miles, and I'm doing,
So see, we're right back to the BS, like of having to prove that you're not broken to yourself and everyone else. So going back to what kind of differences and decisions could you make coming up if there is nothing to prove there to
Yeah.
yourself or anyone else?
Well,
And then I'm going to give you the harder one next. That's the easy question. There's going to be a harder one next, just so
yeah.
we're
So
ready.
yeah, so the it would be very interesting because I have become, as a result of everything we've just discussed and other things, naturally very competitive, and I do. Um, I don't. Again, it's not that I do it because I want other people to
No,
like
it's to
be.
measure your worth.
Well, it's yeah. I mean, I get like I genuinely like to build things that are cool and help people.
Yep.
Um, I really do. I mean, that's why. I mean, my podcast is called No Surrender. I'm not doing it because I want 1 million or 50 million or 100 million followers on Instagram. I'm doing it because I want to help
Help
people.
one person. Yeah.
Yeah, even if it's like, that's exactly what I say. Even if we only film 10 episodes and help one person, then that's cool. So but again, I'm not, and even that, like I say, I'm doing it to help people, but I'm doing it because I genuinely want to, right?
Right.
So yeah, it's so taking
What
away.
do you change or let go in your life that you have been using to prove to yourself and to others that you're not broken? What and you don't need to say it on here. I'm just saying that this is the question, right? And this is where we connect with the audience as well, right? And in the audience, I guarantee there's people out there that lived like you and I of trying to prove that they're not broken, right? Someone sometimes said they're not broken, not worthy, not enough. And that they know that working hard, persevering, struggling, and suffering will prove it to themselves and to others. I'm like you, I've been trying to prove to myself my whole life that I'm not broken, right? They said I was, and I've been trying to prove that wrong. And so that's the big, like, the question. If you feel like that, okay, so what do we do with that? What benefit can we take out of this? What benefit did Justin give to all of us through his traumas? Is looking at and saying, where in my life could I give up, or what would I give up if I didn't have to prove to myself or others anything? That's a all of a sudden it's like, well, maybe I might sell that business. You know, like I don't have to prove anything anymore.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and yeah, it's interesting filming these back to back because there's a lot of content that's good for both. And one example is you told a story in my podcast about how there was a moment 10 years into your
Yep.
entrepreneurial journey where you basically like let go of the what was holding you back, like
Yep.
your trauma, basically, or trauma,
Yes.
some of them at least. And here I am in this set of businesses that I currently own at about the 10-year mark, and I recently had a similar thing happen. And
Yep.
more specifically for your listeners and viewers, it was a that again that moment of surrender. Like it's not that I'm giving up; it's that I
Yeah.
will not continue to let my life be run by the negative cycle of shit.
There you go. Right. So that's the whole piece of what will we give up? We don't have to. What will we? And then this is the second. So the second truth that in this conversation, discovery with you that you've brought into the world for me, for the audience, for yourself. And this is one I've had to use quite a bit. And this, I hate this question, but I have to ask myself it like multiple times a day. And I often forget too, uh, because I don't like this one. So the first one you brought in was, what would I give up? What would I change if I didn't have to prove anything to anyone or myself? Here's the next one. What if it was easy? What if this was easy? What would it look like if it was easy? Because you and I don't like easy. We're always looking for the hardest way possible. And so then it's, what would it look like if it was easy? How's that one settle with you?
Well, ironically, and like another thing that I mentioned in the episode we just recorded for my podcast is we were supposed to have this conversation today. Like
Yeah.
it was supposed to be today at this time. And we're supposed to be talking about these things today because it is actually like I'm in that transitional period right now. Like it is becoming easier. It's still really hard and I'm still
But
like
could it be like if you were making decisions not from proving to yourself or others, not from suffering, not from having to persevere so that people see your worth, right? And you were making them from a place of that how can I create ease, right? What choices can I create that would make this all easy? That's
yeah.
a whole different world.
Yeah, yeah, it is. And it's common for well, yeah, very common for people to get there and then screw everything up again.
Because they need it to be hard, they need to be broken, they need negative external assessments, right? They need to
Hmm.
prove to themselves and to others. That's why, as we talked about so well in your podcast, which I'll link below, because I think if you listen to this, you got to go listen to the No Surrender one as well, right? Because these are going to go really well back, hand in hand. That being able to let go of that attachment to some false future, let go of that attachment to some identity that someone else put onto you, right? We are the authors of our experience, and if you're in suffering, it's because you want suffering. If it's in scarcity, it's because you want scarcity. Now, where many people are sitting there listening to me saying, well, I don't want that, I don't want scarcity, I don't want to be in debt, I want success. Well, your conscious mind wants that, but your subconscious mind doesn't. It wants to stay stuck in its old patterns that has got us to where we are today. And so it is in the exploration and bringing to the light these patterns. Like what I love about this for Justin is at no point, like he he's never going to look at another decision with like thinking, well, is this because I'm trying to prove I'm not broken? Am I, trying to make sure someone isn't negatively assessing me? Is this just to suffer and persevere to prove my worth? Like you're gonna have to look at every choice through that lens because we shine the light in it. And now you get a choice because you are exactly where you want to be every moment of your life. And most people are like, well, but I'm not. Well, you are exactly where your subconscious wants you to be, and it's more powerful. But as we shine the light of what I call capital T truth into your world, and you see those things in the corner, well, now we get to make choices. Now we get to be the author as opposed to the victim.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And to kind of bring in a little bit more of the divine wisdom, Mark divine wisdom, within the last few months, we had a coaching call and he was like, know this, just know this. If
I
you own
can
a
see him. I can hear him.
yeah, he was like, if you own a business that does not serve you, then you don't own the right business. And I
And let's add some more language to that. If you don't own a business that serves your highest self, your conscious mind, and it just serves your subconscious need to suffer or your subconscious need to be safe, then you're in the wrong business. And
right,
most of us are. I've been in the wrong business my whole life until right now, right? In the last 4 or 5 years, where I get to just bring the light of what I would call the divine truth, capital T truth, truth that is greater than me, into the world and into people's worlds, as opposed to allowing them and me and everyone else to live in our subconscious lowercase t truths that just create the same story over and over again.
yeah, yeah, that's awesome because ironically, when my podcast was born, which again wasn't long ago, I was I pitched it to Mark during our one of our coaching calls, and he used some of the words you just used, like your calling, what you're here for, is it the best use of your skill set? And he was like, you have to do this podcast. It doesn't matter if the timing's right. It'll probably never be right. Like do it because you're capable of so much more than just owning some cool car businesses,
Yeah.
and so yeah, it's
Well, you're capable of doing a whole lot of stuff. What he's saying is that you're called, you're put on this planet to bring a different frequency of light than just cool cars.
Yeah. And so sure enough, I followed that up with a question to him. I was like, so if I do this, Mark, will you join me on the show? And sure enough, he was commitment number one. And then speaking to what you just said, the Christian singer Amy Lord, my company works with the company that she works at, and I told her about this idea of having conversations that, of trials, tribulations, and comebacks, and she just immediately was like, absolutely, you need to do that immediately, right? And so I popped the question to her, would you consider coming on for an episode? Yes, absolutely. So what you just said, higher
So has
calling.
this been easy or hard? Right?
Oh,
Easy. It's bringing your truth into the world, right? It's you're not, and are you doing this to prove that you're not broken? No, you're doing this to serve. And so you can see how acting in truth and alignment, right? And what we talked about, right? What is doing this podcast for me to prove to anyone, to including myself, that I'm not broke? Nope. Is this going to be hard again? Another hard struggle, suffer uphill? No, it's not. It's going to be easy. Okay. We're acting in capital T truth. We're not acting in our lives anymore.
yeah, and I guess the kind of the cherry on top for the story that I was just telling is, you look at the name, just the last names of those first two guests, Divine Lord. Like,
Yeah.
what other message from the universe could you ask for to have, like a message that
Yeah.
that's the right path to be on?
Yep. That is definitely good that I wasn't third, because Yatch doesn't do any justice for anything. If we change the T and we put a yacht in there, maybe we can do something. But that's awesome. So, uh, just to kind of bring this all together, what we got to explore here with Justin, excuse me, what we got to explore here with Justin was through something as common as dyslexia, right? And did anyone in the school or your parents take any of the decisions they made to harm you? None,
None.
right? They all were doing their best, right? But even in them doing their best, that created the opportunity for 8-year-old Justin to have to figure out what's going on, right? To see through that confusion. What did 8-year-old Justin figure out? He figured out, oh, I'm broken. They're at least telling me I'm broken. And in them identifying me as broken, other people are going to negatively assess me. And the only way out is to suffer. I'm going to suffer. I'm going to work. I'm going to persevere harder than anyone else. I'm going to prove them all wrong. I'm going to prove to myself that I'm not broken, right? That loop, did it serve him? Yes. Produced all sorts of accomplishments throughout, but also required unbelievable suffering throughout every piece of this, and always limited the full expression of his ability to succeed, right? Still had some success, produced some accomplishments, had to suffer through all of it. And there's always that limitation of being free. And what did we learn as the tools to get out of that? Two big questions. What if I didn't have to prove anything to anyone or myself? What choice would I make in this? And the second one, which is the one I use all the time and I need to use more, is what would this look like if it was easy? Because in my life, everything's got to be hard. But when you open that possibility, your brain will automatically start doing it. And so, thank you, Justin, for being courageous enough to allow your traumas to show us what untruth looks like. And so many of us identify with that. But only through that do we bring truths, capital T truths, into the world for all of us to benefit.
Absolutely. Yeah. You're welcome. It was my pleasure. And I'm excited I'm going to do the same thing. I'll link our episode here on your show
Yep.
in my episode. My episode with you on it will probably be out a little sooner, I'm guessing. So when the episode airs, with me here on your show, we'll
Yep.
make sure and link it in there.
We got it.
But yeah.
Is
And
there, and within that, do you have any requests for the audience? Any place, any way? Because you gave them a huge gift, right? Through your courage and of sharing these gifts of truth. I think that warrants that you can make some asks if you want.
yeah. The main thing is, as I mentioned, no surrender. nosurrendershow.com is the website for my podcast. It started out as a passion project for my wife and I, again, to give back, and we've quickly gotten a lot of good feedback and landed some great guests like Larry. And you can find us on YouTube, Spotify. We've got a Instagram profile that, these days it's all about followers. We don't have a lot of followers yet. So if you
Yeah,
could, yeah. So if you could follow us there, and heck, even we have an option to DM us through Instagram for, if you think you might be a good candidate to come on the show and tell your story, because we like to dive into pretty specific stories that paint pictures for others that are going through trials, tribulations, and comebacks, so we can hopefully relate with individuals and help them get through the darkness and back to the light as quickly as possible.
I love it. Thank you for what you do. Thank you for coming on the show. Thank you for having me on yours. And like we said on yours, we'll do round two for you, and we can see once you start implementing the no proving and the ease. I'd love to have you back for a recap of what does life look like post trauma.
Hey man, that sounds awesome. It more than sounds awesome. It's going to be awesome, because things are going to continue to get better, and we'll have more great stories to tell.
I love it. Thank you again for being on the show. Thank you all for listening, and take the ability to identify where these strategies have lived in your life, and then use the tools that we brought in to create truth, capital T truth in your life. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time.
Thank
you. If this episode sparks something in you, share it with someone who's high performing but still carrying weight they don't talk about. Subscribe, leave a review, and as always, live in truth. Capital T truth. We'll see you next time.